Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come here today and talk about Devin. So Devin is a tool that I've been developing on the side of my full-time job, and it was actually my master thesis project last year. So the agenda that I want to talk about, first I'll just show a slide about me, then I'll talk about briefly the term software development lifecycle. What is that, and why should we care about it, and why is it a thing in Denmark? Well, not in Denmark, in the world, in development in general. Then I'll show tell about Devin's features and how it applies to the development life cycle. Then we'll see the demo video. After that, briefly, I will show some under the hood stuff, some conceptual architecture and some code snippets, talking a little bit about what external technologies Devin communicates with. Then, as mentioned, Devin was a master thesis, so I also have a few research results to show. And then throughout this talk, you might think, I already know a tool that can do some of this stuff, which is called Otto, which you might be using. So I'll show a small comparison how Devin compares to Otto and how they're different. And lastly, show you how we intend to see the Devin product evolve over the coming months. So I am a software developer and cloud architect, and I enjoy DevOps. I've been a FileMaker developer since 2012, developing small custom apps for small companies. Then in 2019, I started a startup called Carl, where we do AI planning for farmers. We also use some FileMaker stuff for some internal systems there. And I have a master of in software development and technology from the IT University of Copenhagen. And then on the side, I'm actually a private in the Danish National Guard. So the software development lifecycle. This, you might have seen this symbol before, and sometimes we also, it's not quite the same, but we can use the same symbol as DevOps. And DevOps describes both all the aspects that are related in the development of your software, and Ops is on the operations side. So the software development lifecycle describes all the phases that your software goes through, and I'm sure you already know that. The problem is that in FileMaker, some of these steps becomes quite hard specifically because the way FileMaker software is stored is not stored in its concrete syntax, so it's not stored as regular text as other software would. So you can't really use many of the tools that you would use to optimize these phases through DevOps. And the goal is to have all of these phases connected and streamlined and integrated, because it then makes it easier and faster and more reliable to develop and test and release new versions of the software for your clients. So that's the whole goal, to make this whole circle smooth. And that's what Devin is all about. So Devin optimizes this whole DevOps symbol circle. It is a complete tool set that the goal was kind of to impact all of these phases in DevOps, and not only a few. And basically, it applies to DevOps, or it does two things for you. It allows you to adapt modern practices and ensure a higher quality software. It does that by facilitating an environment where you can do branch development. So you don't have to do development on your production files. You can actually do that on separate development files. It facilitates a way to do version control and change logging for your whole team, so collaboratively. And that is something that a lot of FileMaker developers struggle with. It also allows you to write unit tests and integration tests, actually. So you still have to write those tests as scripts yourself, but Devin facilitates an environment where you can run those tests and get a nice overview of what test passed and whatnot. And then lastly, it also allows you to stage the changes in an isolated environment. So when you release something for production, before it hits production, you can actually test around in a production-like environment before rolling it out. And the second thing that it does is that it saves you time by removing a lot of manual processes. Everything that Devin does, it's moving a lot of files around, and especially in the version control stage. And all that is automated. So all file renaming and file movement and creation of folders and backing stuff up, all that is automated. And then it does what you might know from Otto. It facilitates an automated and scheduled deployment and data migration functionality, so that you can automatically just roll out your new versions. And lastly, it also provides a centralized way of monitoring your server and all your database files. If we look at overall Devin, what kind of workflow does it support? Then it's kind of built to support this kind of workflow. So the idea is that you have a file that you develop, and then you continuously test that file using integration tests and unit tests that you write. Then you can document your changes in the changelog, and when you're satisfied with all the tests and stuff, you can release it. And from the release phase, you can deploy it. And as I just talked about before, you don't have to deploy it directly to production. You can actually deploy it to a separate isolated environment, and that's completely scalable. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. It's up to you. So the idea is that you can then test the final stuff in the staging environment, and if something is wrong, you can then go back to the development again. Otherwise, you can deploy to production if you're satisfied. And every step throughout this workflow, you can monitor. That's kind of the idea. And now I would like to show how in practice that would look like with the video.
I go down to my dock, and here I have Devin. When Devin has opened up, I get to see the different projects that I have. And Devin is actually providing what you would think of as, if you have experience with programs like Xcode, Devin actually provides an Xcode-like feeling to FileMaker development. For this example, we'll be using Carl. When I click on Carl, it opens up the project workspace for Carl. In here is actually where I do everything related to DevOps for my Carl files. It has 4 different tabs up here. The first one being the configuration. So this is where I configure and handle settings for this project, basically. In Devin, Devin is built around the practice that you want to separate your software by concern, as it's called. So we want not to have a single solution file with all the functionality and all the code. We would actually like to split it out so that we have a file handling different parts of the software. And that's of course up to you how you do that. And you also might not do it, but this is what Devin is kind of built for. So in Devin, a file is actually referred to as a module. So in this project, I have a bunch of different files. Then in the branches tab, this is actually where I interact with these files. And this is where I perform operations on them. And it's also where I document changes for them. So you have a master branch that actually defines what is your production files looking like. And then we also have a development branch, which is hosting all the development copies that we're working on, so that we don't make edits directly to the master files. I also have a recovery stack over here, where I can actually, per module, I can see what previous versions exist. And this is not a feature that is working yet, but soon there'll be an ability to restore and roll back a version if an error happened or so. I can also, if I click on a module, I can see the specific changelog for this module, for this version. If I click on it again, I get this drop-down menu where I can now, like this, see the complete history of edits to this file. And lastly, there's a deployment tab that actually shows the actual deployment files on the servers. Here I can see how many users are connected to the file at the moment, when was the last activity. I also get an overview of what version, what file is on here, and whether it is on the latest version. On the left here, I can have different what in Devin I call deployment groups. So for instance, you might not want to have one file for all your clients. Maybe you want to have one file per client that you copy out. So this is a way to group files together. But you can actually also use it if you want, for instance, a test group. So when you deploy a new version of a file, maybe you don't want to deploy it directly just to production. So here I'll be showing an example where I have a test deployment group that I will deploy to first. And this could, of course, be on a different test server or whatever. Okay, so let's dive in to this. So let's say I would like to make a change to my module called field condition service. I'll press this one, and then I'll press branch. This will then copy the master file and deploy it on the development branch for us to make edits on it. Devin here is communicating with FileMaker's native APIs like the admin API and the data API, and also using the command line interface. And sometimes these tasks might take a while because, as you know, opening and closing files on the server sometimes it takes a while. So here Devin is waiting for that. And I think we are soon ready. Yep. So now here we have a development copy of the field condition service master file. And it automatically incremented the version number to 1.2.5 here. If I want to access this, I can actually just click this one. Then I log into it. And now I've opened this file. So this is also a way of actually not even using FileMaker's built-in overview of files, but the idea is here that you actually access all your files, all your development files at least, through the Devin workspace, which is just a very centralized and integrated way of doing it. Okay, so we have opened up this file. So now let's make an edit to this file. I'll open up the script workspace, and I would like to implement some error handling in this script that fetches some data from an external API. So let's say I would like to check whether the pulley ID is empty or not. So I'll say if is empty, pulley ID should. I would like that it should return error. And I save it. I can keep it open or I can close it. Now I'll keep it open. I want to log that I added error handling to weather fetch. And this is a feature. I could also say that it's a bug fix or a deprecation of something. And I add it. And it's now added to the changelog here. So if other people, if any other from my team would also be making changes to this file, they would also appear here, and I would be able to see here who made what changes. Now on this development file, I also have another button, and this one it gives me all the different operations I can make on this development file. And before I release it, I would like to run my tests that I've developed for this file. So I click test. Now it's finding the different tests in the file, and there was an error. And click here and see, okay, this test failed. I can also go into this window, the runner window, and select tests here, and then I get an overview like this. Here I can also see the duration of the test, and I can see some different information about who performed the test, what was the method, and what version, etc. Okay, let's find out why the test failed. I'll open up the script workspace again. And Devin requires that your tests are hosted in a parent folder called tests here. In here right now, I have two different tests. I practice the naming convention for tests, the given when then convention. You can use whatever convention you do, and you probably have a total different naming convention. I see here the test that failed was the given fetch when passed missing poly ID, then return 10,002 error. That one failed. Okay. And actually I know why. That's because I didn't return the error code. I just returned a string called error. So I'll fix that. And I will run the test again. And it succeeded. Perfect. And also what you might notice is that here, when I had a failed test, I'm actually not able to release the module. And that's because of a setting in the configuration page where I can define that I would only allow to release a module if all tests have passed. That can also be disabled. But now all the tests completed. That's perfect. So now we know that it's ready to roll. I will quickly just add a bug fix. I will say fixed. I will say fixed 10,002 error handling. Now that's added. And now I can release it. I press release and I give it a new version number. Let's say 1.2.6. Now it will trigger the release process. It will do a lot of file handling and it will push the different files. And now it was released. It shows a few warnings, and that's nothing to worry about. It's just that it's retrying a few calls here. I can see nothing, no issue. So now this has now replaced the previous file in the master branch. And in the releases pane, I can now see the new version here, and I can see that no migrations have been triggered. Also in the deployments phase, it now shows that there's an update available to these two production files. In the configuration, I could have actually enabled auto deploy and migrate after release. That would actually automatically have initiated the update process. But if you like the control to manually update it or to schedule an update, this is the way to do it. And now I would actually want to only just update the test deployment group. I won't update the one that my users are connected to. So I press update, and here I can choose update now. It will just initiate the update right now, or I can schedule it for later. If you have service windows, this might be a nice way to schedule it for like an overnight schedule. I will just press update now. If I open the runner window again, where we saw the tests, there's actually also a migrations pane. Here, I get an overview of all the migrations that I've done. And we can see here that now there's actually one initiated for the one we just triggered. So here I can see that it's the group tests, and it's from this version to this version. It's on this server, and it was a manual triggering. And here I can follow the status, and I can also abort it if I like. This process will take a few minutes because the way Devin works is that it's actually a scheduled. It's a schedule that will run system scripts, and that will only be triggered every minute. So while this is happening, I can show you something else here. In the configuration tab, I can also specify if I want a certain minimum inactivity period. For instance, maybe I don't want to update any file that has had a user connected within the last 30 minutes. I can also specify how many concurrent migration processes I would allow simultaneously. This would avoid server crashes if you have concurrent DMT processes, for instance. There is also a monitoring window that is actually just a centralized space for all your servers where you can see all the different files and their statuses. So this would be an alternative to have different browser tabs open. Okay, going back, we can see it's now been past 2 minutes and it's actually migrating right now. And it is now completed, we see. And we see that it took 4 minutes. As a last thing, the runner window also has a convenient console log space here. So this is actually where you can see what's going on, what Devin is actually doing in the background. So if you interpret any errors, you can actually see all the different logs that are created for this.
Yeah, so that was a very a short and intense demonstration of how you would go through the phases of DevOps from development to deployment and everything. Yeah, as mentioned, a short representation of how you would go through the different stages in Devin. And of course, it was very fast, and there was a lot of stuff that I didn't show in the video, but it shows the basic idea. And now I want to quickly just show some under the hood stuff because Claris Beyond, as you also mentioned, that you like to talk about how FileMaker communicates with stuff outside of the FileMaker world. And obviously in Devin, so Devin is built on FileMaker, the app and the engine, everything is their FileMaker files. But obviously there's a need for external files, system scripts, and external APIs for all of this to work. So I'm just showing two different examples here. So for instance, this is conceptually how when you run a test, how that works. And that is a very, very simple integration, you could say. So from the Devin app, you trigger the operation in the Devin engine. So those are two separate FileMaker files that the Devin engine is hosted on your team's development server. And then every developer has the Devin app installed on their computer. So from the Devin engine, basically the data API is just used first to find all the scripts in the test folder of your files. And then afterwards, it just runs those tests again via the data API. So that's a very, very basic example of how the Devin engine uses the data API. And for your information, not so much to show some specific code, but this is a small code piece, like a code snippet from the very, very high-level FileMaker script that handles this a test run of a script. And my idea of this was more to show, again, for your information, how refactored the code is. So there's obviously a lot of code involved in this on the FileMaker side, and I've made sure that like no feature or no functionality exists more than once in the code. An example of that is on, I don't know if you can see the line number, but on line 17, it's calling the script called fms api.call, and that is actually just a set of small scripts that handle every communication with both the data API and admin API, but it's only happening one place, and it's that one script or set of scripts are used extensively throughout the whole engine. So yeah, just to show a standardized piece of FileMaker code, basically. And then to show a bit more advanced or complex conceptual architecture here, this is basically what is involved in what I showed in the demo, in the deployment and migration part of it. So obviously there's a lot of other stuff going on here. So the Devin engine both uses the data API to open and close some files. And then mostly the admin API is used to call system scripts that are installed when you install Devin. Some system scripts also installed that handle a lot of external operations. So through that admin API, it calls the system scripts, and those system scripts handle everything from file handling, and it integrates with the admin command line interface, doing backups and clones, and also opening and closing files. Then SSH is a huge part of how stuff is synced between the servers, and how, for instance, clones are pushed from the development server to the production servers. And then obviously the data migration command line interface is handling the data migration itself. That's also triggered through a script that I will show in a minute. And then all of this, in order to sync this back into the Devin engine, we use a lot of log files and status and progress files. And they are stored, so they're written to as part of the system scripts, stored on the server, and then they're sent back to the server via SSH, and then read by the Devin engine using the read data file script step. So that's how the whole migration process and everything is kind of monitored throughout the whole thing. And it's also how the whole version handling is made. That's in a lot of JSON files. And then here is a conceptual. This is not the actual script because I've hidden here a lot of boring logging stuff. But this is just to show how, for instance, this script that is run by the admin API, for instance, integrates with the command line interface, the FMS admin close operation in the close module function, and then the migration itself down in the function. And down from line 131 in the main script, those are all the operations actually included in migrating a module. So yeah, again, also just for information, I want to show this. Then going a bit further, talking about, as mentioned, this was a part of my research in my thesis, and a big part of the thesis is that you need to have some very concrete and tangible results, and using a set of different what is called DevOps maturity models, and you can actually read all about this in my thesis that's available on the website devin.fm. You can read the whole thesis there. But using those two different DevOps models made me kind of verify how Devin improves the different aspects of DevOps for a team. And specifically for version control and branching, you can actually say that there is a 20 to 40% increase. In testing, it's 30 to 60%, and deployment 30 to 40%, and monitoring 25%. Again, you can read more about that in my thesis. It's all very deeply elaborated and accounted for there. And then getting close to the end here, I just wanted to kind of provide not so much a comparison, but an overview of how Otto, a tool like Otto, and Devin, how they differ. So Devin is very focused on providing an integrated way of applying features for the complete set of phases of DevOps, where Otto is very focused on the deployment and migration automation. And also the other main feature is that Devin provides a complete shared project workspace. Like if you're used to working with VS Code or some IDEs like Xcode and that kind of stuff, the idea is that you access all your files and everything through the Devin workspace, which is all collaborative. And then Otto, of course, has some more advanced features that Devin doesn't have, like webhooks, receivers, and some different OAuth integrations and a logging API and stuff like that. If we translate this into the DevOps symbol, we can see that this is also part of the thesis, so you can also read it there. But Otto is focusing a lot on the upside, well, only on the upside, whereas Devin tries to touch upon everything, because as I found in my research, it's hard to optimize DevOps for a team if you don't touch on all surfaces. Then lastly, just a short or like a brief overview of what we expect to come next. So a big or the biggest feature request has definitely been having Unix support on the server side. Currently, it's only supported for Windows Server, and we are working hard on that, and we hope to launch that around mid-November in the beta 6. And then after that, we will most likely release the final general available version that will include later on a shared project workspace and more team management features and some more advanced migration settings and more advanced changelog, maybe even integrating tools like Git to be able to see code diffs, and also in the future a logging API or some sort of Claris connector. And you're very welcome to go to the website devin.fm. You can sign up as a beta tester. You can just look around. You can take a look at the public roadmap, and you can also request features, and you can report bugs through that as well. So that is what I had about Devin. I hope you think it's interesting. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, David. That looks like an impressive amount of work that you guys have put into that. I think we have a few minutes for Q&A. Does anybody want to, David, any questions?
Looks like there was one question in Slack about from Tim. Does it need to have additional ports open for SSH on servers?
Yeah, so it uses the standard port 22 for SSH, but you don't have to. Currently, that's a fixed port number, but if you use that port for anything else in the future, we might be able to. We can adjust that, but everything that Devin requires, like even the admin API port and the data API port and SSH port, it's all automatically opened and set up and configured on your server when you install Devin. So you don't have to open up the port yourself.
So once again, thanks very much to David. Greatly appreciate your presenting today.